All right. Sorry about that, folks on Zoom. So I was saying that yesterday we looked at the challenges. Today we're focusing on the vision. So for the vision, we're going to look at what success would look like, what values your community shares, and then what resources you have to make progress. So what do you have in hand that you can leverage to make stuff happen? And then finally, the big question is, what do you want to accomplish together? Okay, so now the next problem is, how do we advance the slides, which are not moving forward now? I got it. Here it is, little button down there. Okay. So this is trying to wrap up, to summarize all those sticky notes that are on the maps in the room here, and then the conversation we had at the end of the meeting. It's no way an exhaustive list of everything you said. Just trying to give you some feedback about what we heard. So on community systems, we heard that housing is a fundamental issue for the community. We heard that there are communication issues in the town, both that meetings are not always representative of the full community, and that there are knowledge gaps in the community, that when it comes time to make decisions, not everybody knows everything they might need to know to make good decisions, and that it's really hard to communicate what's sometimes complicated, changing information to the full community. There's related to that a challenge of how do you integrate your diverse community into one whole, so that everybody is part of not only making decisions, but feeling like they all belong. There's a question of what's your future economic strategy. There's a need for recreational and community spaces. So there are a number of sticky notes on that topic on the maps. There's notes and conversation about facilities for sports, about the need for a community center, for space for people of all ages to gather together. There were a fair number of comments about strong institutions and nonprofits that exist on the island. And a couple of comments and notes about the schools, both recognizing that the schools are, that the school campus itself is a meeting place for the community, and that it's a strong school system that's doing a good job of sort of recognizing and celebrating the diversity of the students. But also that the schools need funding, and the teachers especially need opportunities for housing that they can afford. And that theme of housing that people can afford who live on the island, I think, extended beyond teachers as well. And then there was a question that I thought was a good question from Nat of, do we love Nantucket enough? I'm not sure exactly what that means or what it looks like to answer that question, but I do think it's a powerful question. What aspects of Nantucket do we love? And if you nurture the aspects that you love, what does that become? So I think it's easy to focus on the negative of what we want to fix or change. And it's also good to focus on the positive of what we love, and that idea of nurturing. So things people value for natural systems, open spaces, beaches, bay scallops was called out on a couple of different sticky notes, fishing, access to water in general. And then on the challenges side, concerns about water quality, that's both drinking water, concerns about PFAS and the impacts of that, which is basically toxic materials that could be in your water supply that would be bad for your health. Concerns about surface water with algae blooms, impacts of excess fertilizer, and so on. People made comments about sea level rise, flooding, erosion, stormwater management, that some of the habitats that have sort of defined Nantucket are evolving and changing. And so the landscape itself is changing. And that's both natural processes of secession, and then also invasive species that are coming in and changing things. There are a number of sticky notes about litter and waste management, And, so that speaks to like a broader care for the environment issue. Good number of sticky notes about deer. There being too many deer jumping out in front of cars. And then associated with that, ticks and diseases that are borne by ticks. And then we had a lot of conversation about whether Nantucket has achieved its conservation goals. And if so, what's next? I think that looking at this list for me, a lot of the issues that are on this list, sort of erosion, stormwater management, evolving habitat, and so forth, these are issues of management. So I think that might be a useful way to think about the natural systems at this point, is you've spent a lot of time conserving land. And now whether that is continuing to the same degree or not is a question for you all. But regardless of that, I think that there's a lot of sort of maintenance and management and ongoing processes in this natural systems. And then on the built systems, for the first time ever in any community, we heard about traffic. So there's this quote that I loved on the sticky note: "We still live in a beautiful place, just get up early enough to enjoy it." Which I think that one was about traffic. People talked about or made notes about there are lots of places to walk. Coast to Coast Trail was called out a couple times, bike paths, there are free buses. So there are a lot of positives on the transportation side as well. So there is traffic, but there are other ways to get around. There were concerns about waste management, overbuilding, the zoning code not aligning with what people want, potential enforcement issues, a lot of stickies on the south side of the island about wind farms that were pink, meaning people were not supportive. Concerns about parking. Both, some people made comments that there was too much parking and others said there wasn't enough parking. Sewer system capacity and other sewer issues. There was a comment that historic preservation is never done. And then a number of people said that everyone loves downtown Nantucket, so we should sort of learn from that and build from that model, emulate that. And then I think a big overarching question of is infrastructure prepared for the future? So as we said last night, a vision is a mental picture of what you want your community to be like in the future. So we're focused on, I think, the next 10 years. And it's the aspiration that unites the whole master plan. So these are elements of the vision statement from the last master plan in 2009. So it had a mission statement, which is a little different from the vision statement. It's a little more direct and short, but I'm going to read it to you. So, to create and sustain a healthy community, one whose residents have stability and security with resources protected for future generations. And then there were a couple of excerpts that I pulled out. There are several pages, so this is just part of it. But this vision is for a future that is not radically different from what it is today. Most do not feel that Nantucket should change into something else, but instead remain close to what it is, or as remembered through nostalgia. Change is difficult to accept on Nantucket, although unavoidable. I pulled this out because I thought that tension between change and sort of keeping what you have was telling, right? So on the one hand, it's saying we want to keep it the way it is, and on the other hand, it's recognizing at the end that, well, change is going to happen no matter what. So one of the real challenges is to figure out what the 2009. Figure out what that change is going to be and sort of predict it and manage it and steer it in the direction that you want it to go. Developing a vision that a majority can agree on is a daunting task, considering the vast difference between many. And it went on to describe all those differences. Ultimately, however, there are some basic concerns on which all would likely agree: safety, security, economic stability, beauty, and maintenance of homes and infrastructure. So those last words, those are values, those are community values. So when we're talking about those today, there are things like safety, safety and security. I think people inherently feel that safety and security are good. They're good in and of themselves. You You don't do safety and security to achieve some other end. You do things to achieve safety and security.
Drive a Tesla here.
Was that?
You can drive a Tesla here.
All right. And then just one example of a vision statement from somewhere else that's very different. I'm not putting this out there saying this is the way your vision statement should be. But I think it's instructive just to think how maybe a different community thinks about things. So this is from Greensboro, North Carolina. And they say in 2040, Greensboro will be the best mid-sized city in America, the greenest city in the Southeast, equitable, diverse, and inclusive, and they have a couple other points. But I think that idea of being bold and saying you're going to be the best at something is kind of powerful. It's not very New England, right? But I think there's something to consider there of what would it be like to say that you're going to reach big, and to be ambitious for whatever it is you want to do. Okay, so we're going to spend the majority of our time together in breakout groups. We're going to divide you up into 3 breakout groups, and you're going to circulate amongst 3 stations. And you're going to work on teasing out the elements of a vision for each of those systems, the natural systems, built systems, and community systems. So a couple of ground rules. I think you guys are pretty good at this already, but these are basic things you learn in kindergarten. So try to have one speaker at a time. It enables everybody to hear each other, and it respects the speaker by listening to them. Have a conversation, not a debate. So if you start going down a rabbit hole into, in 2008, were there 10 building permits or 20 building permits, and you're debating about that kind of fact, it's both too detailed for this session, and just not what we're aiming for. We're aiming for big ideas, and we're aiming for building consensus overall. Try to build off of each other's ideas. Maintain respect and courtesy. Just be nice to each other. Try to recognize that if people disagree with you, it's probably because they have a different perspective or they have different values. They're not bad people. They just think differently, and have different experience. And if you can dig into what's underneath what they're saying and try to understand their perspective, you might be able to come to agreement. And then finally, make sure everyone has a chance to speak. So, as I said, we're going to break into stations, rotate. We've left about 110 minutes for that. We started a little late, so that could be shorter. That was kind of the outside envelope, and if it goes quicker, that's fine. I know that some of you want to leave for an event at 12, and we'll do our best to make sure that we're done by then. After that, we're going to have you use a sort of a Mad Lib form to write a vision statement. And then some of you will share those, and we'll have a closing discussion. And then you'll be out of here. Any questions before we break into groups?
Sorry, I'm not familiar enough with everything, but I think it's hard to understand what we can control and what we can't control. Like, for example, can we just ban fertilizers? Like, is that just something you can't do? Like, things like that where it would just be easier just to say you can't fertilizer. And so is that crazy, or is that something that I don't want to spend time on discussions that can't be controlled?
Yeah, so I think that the facilitator from your group hopefully will be able to answer that question, as well as other people in the community in the breakout group.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we do this sessions like this is to give everybody a chance to talk, and there aren't any bad ideas, right? And part of it is what I hate is if we finish the project, the plan is published, you take it before our board or to town meeting, and somebody stands up in the back and says, "What about this thing about fertilizers?" And we didn't think about it. So this is really the time, and part of what public engagement is about is making sure that all ideas are brought out on the table. We may throw them out afterwards, or it may become the focus of the whole plan. But this is part of what we want to do today, so that's great. So 3 groups we're gonna break into. They have been cleverly numbered 1, 2, and 3. 1 is over here, natural systems. 2 is there, the built systems and community systems will be number 3 in the back. Yes,
Excuse me, Campbell. I just had a quick question on groups 1 through 3. Are they like, once you've picked one, you're in that one for 110 minutes?
no, another
Yeah, well,
very
yes,
clever idea.
yes,
Well,
yes and no.
you're all gonna have a chance to go to each one.
But the group is going to move as a whole. From
Yes.
table to table.
Yeah, you're gonna be stuck with your group. You're gonna be stuck with your group, so that's why those ground rules are really important of being nice to each other. And we're gonna divide you up so that it's a little more randomized than who you came in with.
Want to do that?
I
You're,
think so.
you're gonna do that.
All right, so you're gonna remember your number and use your Saturday morning brains to find the right station. Everybody ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1.
Hi, Zoom room. I'm going to mute them as we shift to our own breakout groups. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes, 8 people. That's perfect. So, can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So let's just start with a quick icebreaker to kind of wake up, say hello. If everyone could go around and say their name, and let's do one word you would use to describe Nantucket. And I see some familiar faces from last night. Thank you for joining us again. So let's start with you, Bob.
So, first of all, is it possible to get rid of the slides? I don't know if,
Let me see if I can do that.
just my view or something like that. Number 1. Number 2 is I would describe, for those that weren't here last night, I'm a 22-year summer resident. We've owned a home for 22 years and we spend most of the summer in Nantucket. Fortunately, I get to spend the winters in Miami, Florida, so it's not bad. So anyway, one word to describe Nantucket is, I guess my sense would be beautiful. I mean, I just love the beauty of the various places and the people and the activities are all, when I think back in my mind and I describe the island to other people, I talk about how beautiful the island is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mary?
Mary Longacre, and for me, Nantucket is home, and all of the warm fuzzy feelings that go along with that, and the deep connection. And I used last night the word roots. That has this meaning for in this context for me as well. Deep family connections, going back to Tristram Coffin.
Wow, yeah, that's great. And Robert Little? You can unmute yourself. Robert, if you're talking, we're not hearing you. So I'll move to Christy.
I'm Christy Farrenteller. I'm the housing director for the town. And the one word I think of is community.
Great, thanks. And Zoom user. I don't see your name, I just see Zoom user.
Sorry, I think that's me. My name's Jessie Bell, and Mary and Bob took both of my words. When Bob said beautiful, I thought to myself, what would my second word be? And it was home. So those are, I just have to follow up with those words, I guess.
Yeah, that works. Carla? And Ian?
Hi, how you doing? So, actually never been to Nantucket, but I came across these master planning seminars online, and I'm planning to visit this July for my trip. I grew up in Long Island, but I'm fascinated to hear about this site development and city planning aspect. I do dentistry in Northampton, Massachusetts, but always had an interest in the charm of like the shore and the coast. So just
Are you considering a move?
not necessarily a move, but you know, I'm in Massachusetts, licensed for Massachusetts right now, so I'd like to explore that area. And I know I've been to Martha's Vineyard before, but at this point, just kind of getting an interest in this area as well.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome to stay on. The conversation is mostly about like people who know the community intimately and talking about features about it. So it might not all mean a lot to you. So
No, I'm enjoying it so far. Thank you guys for
okay,
having me. I hope you don't mind if I join in.
okay. Mike?
Yeah, am I unmuted? Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Mhm.
Uh, we've been coming with the family here for 50 years. Started with my wife and I sleeping on the beach out in Wisconsin. And I would have to say family home would be my words, because it's been the central point of drawing us all together. Our kids have lived all over the world, and our grandkids, et cetera, from Africa to Sacramento, and they all come back for the middle of the summer when we gather.
Mhm.
So we first rented for 20 years down in Quidnet and learned how to be a rentor. And then we bought some land and finally paid it off and built 25 years ago. And now we're an owner of that we rent the place for when we're not using it ourselves, and then we use it again in the off season, because all the kids have moved back to Massachusetts and we're back and forth regularly.
Mhm.
So it's the family magnet for us, and it has a lot of meaning around that that's already been expressed by Mary and others.
Yeah, that's great. Carla, did you want to introduce yourself? And Robert, one more chance. Okay. So we're going to do, for those who were here last night, we had one interactive exercise. Now we're going to do something a little different. Can you see a sticky board? Sticky note board? Yeah. So we're going to kind of move through this. I have a set of questions, and we're going to kind of move through it systematically. Let's start by having people just call out if they could identify the most important challenge for Nantucket to address in the next 20 years.
I want to address that.
Yeah.
The most important challenge is funding. And I want to make a point about the Greensboro example that was given, where they said they wanted to be the best. That is so dangerous to say. And I think we have that feeling on Nantucket that, oh, we're a world-class resort. We should have the best of this and the best of that. We should have everything that everybody on the mainland has available at our fingertips. And that just isn't possible. You know, we don't have the kinds of resources that, or the adjacent communities that can provide a bowling alley or whatever it might be, a restaurant of a particular type, or any, you know, wide-ranging spread of amenities. We can't accommodate that here. And so the cost of all of our ambitions is the number one problem that I see. You know, we can't have everything because we can't afford all of that.
Mm-hmm. Eli, can you take notes on my board? Can you access this?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So, Mary, are you saying that it's just the town cannot afford to have all the amenities that other communities can have, because other communities, there are so many sort of side by side, whereas Nantucket is this island with itself?
The town can't afford to provide all of the amenities that are available in other communities. Other
Mhm.
communities are have surrounding communities to draw on. You know, so it isn't a big deal if the bowling alley is not in your county, but in the next one over. And we don't have that option, really.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop people, and I'm just using a bowling alley as an example, you know. It doesn't stop people from saying, oh, we want a bowling alley, or we ought to have a bowling alley, or we used to have a bowling alley. You know, why don't we have one now? And it's not a
Getting a
deficiency in
bowling
our
alley,
society.
getting one.
You know, it's the fact that we just can't have everything.
Mhm.
But we have people who, you know, and myself included, who have lived in other places and have come to expect the availability of a wide range of things. And again, you know, restaurants is another good example. You know, we have such, we punch so far above our weight in what we do have that I think it's hard for people to remember that we do have limitations, we do have restrictions, we do have funding as a problem. And we have tremendous private support for things. But again, that spills over into an expectation that we should have public support for things too.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. So I'm hearing that there are sort of inherent limitations on sort of the kind of development that can take place on the island, as well as just the financial resources needed to sustain that development. And despite all of the amazing private financial resources, it's difficult for the town itself to provide maybe the amenities that one would expect. Did I get that correctly?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we had a few people just join, so welcome. Dawn, Carol, Benjamin, would you like to introduce yourselves briefly and say one thing you love the most about Nantucket? Or, oh, sorry, one word you would use to describe Nantucket. And Dawn, you could go first if you wanted to.
Good morning. Um, I'm Dawn Hill-Holgate, and I'm on the select board in my 4th term.
Mhm.
And prior, I served on the HDC for a number of years. I think Nantucket is very special and unique and well preserved.
Mhm. Thank you. Benjamin?
Hi, my name's Ben. I've been coming to the island in the summer for the last 30 years. And something I think makes the island special, uh, peace and dark skies.
Lovely. And Carol?
Oops.
Oh, I think you muted yourself.
Can
Yeah.
you hear me? I'm sorry, I
Good.
missed the question.
What's one word you would use to describe Nantucket?
That's a hard one. When I get off that ferry, it's just perfect.
We can work at that.
I
So
I don't think I could put it into one word, but I would just say it's just so just awesome.
That's great. So the three that just joined, we had a presentation to kick off this session today, which I assume you did not see. But right now we're just doing a little sticky note exercise to work towards a vision for the island where Nantucket wants to go in the next 10 years. And we're starting with the most important challenge for Nantucket to address. So we're just calling out thoughts about what the most important challenge is. Mike, I think I saw your hand up first.
I think Robert was ahead of me, but
Oh, sorry.
yeah. Go ahead, Robert.
I would say the biggest challenge, I think, is responsible leadership and focus. And need all of us involved, and I love our community involvement. But then having the right leaders, having the right focus based on the strategic planning. And it calls to mind a memory of mine that is the most important thing about an effective strategy is what you say no to, what we don't do. So it's sort of following up on what Mary was saying about how we can't do everything. And there has to be some things that we just say no to. We're not going to do that, or you're not going to do that. And I think that's so responsible leadership and focus of that leadership is what I think of as the biggest challenges. Along with the funding. I didn't want to reiterate that, but I think the funding is also a big issue.
Right. Yeah. So responsible leadership and focus, and maybe the ability to say no, either to projects, to people, to, having a clear vision of what is in line with Nantucket's vision for itself and what is not, and being able to act on that. That's great. Mike?
Yeah, I think it's gonna sound kind of crazy, but our success, I think, is our biggest challenge. We've successfully kept hotels off the shoreline. We've successfully extended our season from daffodil to stroll. We've done so many things. We've preserved 62% of the island or something like that. I think we need to think about what our branding wants to be going forward. What do we want to attract? Do we want to have 200,000 tourists here in the summer, or is 65,000 enough? And maybe we want to attract different kinds of people. We need to think about the diversity of our community, and are we serving all levels of it economically and otherwise, et cetera. So a success, I think, is our biggest challenge. You can just let it go and do more and more and more, and submit to the capitalistic nature of things that are really starting to be challenging for us.
Right. Yeah. The challenge of maybe staying true to your core values, despite this massive success of tourism and
Right.
things.
Back when Dawn was a little girl.
Yep.
Which I remember.
All right. Anyone else like to share what they think is the most important challenge for Nantucket to address?
It's Carol. I would just say that all these things and what we found going through the kitchen conversations is everything is interrelated. And I think you're right. I think to gentlemen who just spoke, I think we have to, what is our vision going forward? We need housing for the people who are the core of what we love about this island. And if we don't have housing and affordable housing for them, what is ultimately going to happen here on this island, and taking care of these people medically, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, healthcare services, probably all essential services, right?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Again, this is kind of a brainstorm, so we're just trying to get as many ideas up on the board as possible. So don't be shy.
I want to raise one idea that I thought of overnight, actually, because everybody, and I feel, that we need different housing and people talking about this a lot. But then I think about other communities and myself, and I always commuted to work. I commuted, started out a half an hour, then 45 minutes drive or train to work for my whole life. So I commuted to work. I didn't live right where I worked, and not far away, but it was either car or train. So the fact that we have many people who commute to work here, but they commute by boat to work here, is not a totally, to me, crazy concept. It's not something that is something that we may just have to live with, that fact that not everybody's going to live here, and people need to commute to work, just like I suspect anybody that has lived off island and worked, had to commute.
Mm-hmm.
Look at, we were talking last night about Manhattan, an island, people commute an hour on the train both ways to work. So to commute an hour on a boat is not, to me, something that we should necessarily say is a totally unrealistic thing.
So I'm hearing that maybe you do not agree that like the providing housing for all the workers
No,
on the island.
I don't want to make that statement because I think that the people who, the teachers, nurses, fire, police need people that work in the shops, people that work at the library. Those people that are here working every day, all year long, need places to live, no question. And they don't have them now. So I see that as a big problem. But I also, in conjunction with that, think that there'll always be some people that are going to be commuting here. I think it's a horrible thing that if a fire person has to commute to this island to work here, that to me is a sad statement. Or a teacher, if a teacher had to commute here, that to me is a sad statement.
Got it. Yeah, so need to have housing for year-round teachers, firefighters, etc.
Well, I think too, we need to think about housing even more broadly than we do today. And there's a lot of discussion and dialogue out across the nation, and particularly in the state. And things are coming out like ADUs and starter home communities and zoning changes and things of that nature. I think we just sort of have to open our eyes to perhaps new things. I mean, Herman Melville came here and slept in a boarding house, and we don't have many boarding houses anymore. Maybe we should have some. I don't know. And I think we should also think about the continuity of someone who comes here as a young person, as perhaps as a teacher, perhaps as a firefighter, perhaps as just a restaurant worker, and likes the place and wants to stay and look and see how they can gradually grow into a reasonable situation in the community. I've seen so many people leave the island because they just can't afford it anymore, and it's really difficult.
Yeah.
So cost of living actions to promote things that ease the cost of living should be topmost in our thinking process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, easing the cost of living, providing more diverse housing types. So there's like housing units that fit people at different stages of their life that they can afford and that they can stay and stay on the island as they age and move through different life stages. Yeah. Anyone we haven't heard from yet? Christy, Carla, Dawn, Ben. If there's ideas that you agree with, you can also mention that.
I want to agree with the cost of living comment. And again, even though we are an island, we are not an island. That the larger national economic climate is causing costs of things to go up dramatically, and that is a challenge because that it doesn't just affect people who are low income. It's affecting people further and further up the income scale here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is a problem everywhere. Nantucket is not an exception, but maybe it's feeling it more acutely.
I'll put in one thought.
Yeah.
I have a particular passion for transportation. So along the cost of living conversation, I'd note that for most people, the second largest expense that they have in their budget is for transportation. And the more that we allow people the option not to be reliant on cars, that can potentially free up, the average person spends about $11,000 a year on a vehicle. So if the buses or alternative modes of transit are strong enough, then we free up people to really have a lot of extra money to spend in the local economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point.
Playing off of that, I think that our focus should be to add housing where things are walkable. And I think that we may want to, this would be a very heavy lift, but we may want to revisit having some very small pockets of commercial neighborhood type of zoning in other parts of the island, because I think
Mhm.
our biggest problem is that all of the pressure is going to two locations for goods and services.
Mm-hmm.
Good
Yeah, having
point, though.
more centers with maybe mixed use or commercial development to take some of the
Some
pressure.
little neighborhood pockets where there's like a general store type of thing.
Mhm.
I think would really benefit the island, because it's not necessarily the number of cars, it's the number of trips that they make and the places that they're all heading to.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, one of the realities about transport is if you spend time driving around the island and look at the mixture of the vehicles, it's mostly trucks.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know how we help that, but if there's a way that we could help people in the service industry to be uh, have a lighter touch on the roads, it'd be great. I have no idea how to do it, but
Mhm.
it is mostly trucks out there. Well, a lot more trucks than
Interesting.
cars.
Yeah.
And a lot of
Bob,
those trucks are not commercial vehicles, they're personal vehicles.
Some are, yeah, a lot of them are. My son has the largest one, I think.
You do
Do you mean they're not like contractor trucks?
There's a lot of contractor trucks.
They are
But-
contractor
but-
trucks.
you
But
do
Dawn,
Oh.
it's probably about 50-50, I'd say, Dawn.
you see a noticeable difference on a Sunday morning when people aren't out cutting lawns or
Yeah.
doing construction projects.
Mhm.
It's a lot, there's a lot that goes into managing some of the larger homes, et cetera, on the island, between house cleaners, lawn care, other landscaping care, and like caretakers.
Right. Yeah.
It would be
That
great if there
sounds
was
like
a way to stack them into doing certain neighborhoods at the same time, but that would be another very heavy lift to try and organize something like that.
Mhm.
And then there's weather dependent issues.
Yeah.
It's Carol. Can I ask a question? And maybe Dawn has heard this before. But summer residents who come onto the island, and they have a large family, but they come on with vehicles, 4 or 5 to a home. Has it been considered? I know I've heard a little conversation about it, about limiting ferry reservations to, and I don't know how you do it, to X amount of vehicles per family. I mean, is that something that we could ever consider?
I don't think anyone's ever figured out a way
To do right.
to do that properly and fairly and legally.
Yeah.
But
But if we can limit the trips that these vehicles are making, regardless of how many people have, it would make a huge difference.
the question about cars brings to mind, something that has changed as an unintended consequence. Because there are limited spaces on the boat, people eventually figured out that it was easier
Needs to be assembled.
just to have a car here. And so there are a lot more cars that are, resident on the island than there used to be. There's still plenty of cars going back and forth. But it's an example of how things change, not because of a rule change or anything else, but just because pressure needs to find a relief valve.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would say what's helped, we live in Sconset, is the bus and the free bus. I mean, more and more people are taking advantage of that. Not to take a vehicle into town.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, we heard that last night too. That sounds like that's been a really successful program. Bob, did you want to add another challenge?
I wanted to add a sort of a follow-up and maybe a challenge, but it's also an example, something that Don mentioned. I live in Naushop. I've lived in Naushop for 20 years. When I bought my house in Naushop, there was nothing around me except whole gates was there and some of the, little things were, and it was whatever was going on over in the land across the way. But it was, nothing there. Now there's everything there. And when I first heard about it, and when I first thought about it, I was definitely, I don't want this in my backyard. I don't want to have this here. But now, I mean, I think the Richmond the number of people there, I think, is an issue. But as far as the stores that are there now in Mid Island, across Old South, I've learned to really love those stores and use those stores a lot, as well as Amelia Drive and some of those things there on, what's going on Amelia Drive now. I'm very eager about the hub. I'm very eager about, some of the things that go on there. So I think that's an example of what Don was mentioning, I think, of a secondary area that can be developed and used. And, at first I was very nervous about it. And now I find there are weeks I don't go into town. Everything I need to do, from Stop and Shop East, I don't have to go into town. And initially I was worried about that, but now, other than the traffic on Old South, I think that that's been something that I think is another area that's been developed commercially that has been, I think, very useful to people. My wife this summer is going to be using, hopefully whenever it opens, there's a new gym that's going to be there. And talking about physical therapy in a gym, she says, "Oh, I'm going to go check it out." It used to be something, "Oh, I don't want it. We want to keep the woods. We want to keep silence." But now it's happening already. It's like, I want to go check it out. It's not like, I'm totally opposed to it, as long as in an area and neighborhood friendly and quiet and not, not impacting the trees and the gardens and things like that as best we can.
Right. Maybe if it's done in kind of a balanced way. Christy, and then I want to move on to the next activity, but Christy, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to add, I think one of our biggest challenges that kind of was touched on by everybody was limited resources. And that touches on Mary's comment about funding. And when we're talking about housing, we have limited land, we have limited areas that have the right zoning or access to transportation. And so we're trying to fit a lot in like a small amount of space. And so I think that's one of our biggest challenges, is how do we open up opportunities without kind of transforming or changing Nantucket too much away from how we like it now.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And we talked about that a lot last night as well, like how to protect what makes Nantucket so special and not overdevelop it, but also have the island continue to adapt to meet the needs of the people who live there.
Just as another thought to throw in, could we better shape the attractiveness for certain kinds of uh, people to come to the island? I think about the loss of the hostel out on Surfside. You used to be able to come out and stay for, bring a bunch of bicyclists out for $25 a night. And that's no longer there. I mean, should we be thinking about enabling opportunities like that to sort of shape the kind of people that want to come to Nantucket and have them be more compatible with our situation here?
Yeah, so you said a hospital, and what was the other thing you mentioned?
Well, I was thinking about the hostel and the cyclists, groups of cyclists coming out for $25 a night, et cetera. I know when our daughter got married here, she was in medical school. None of her friends had any money, so they took over that hostel and had the best time of it
Hostel.
at the wedding.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe more affordable attractions to draw people to the island who might not currently feel welcome there.
Well, no, it's more that a hostel will attract people on bicycles versus in cars. And younger people versus just,
Oh, okay.
older, well situated financial people.
Okay.
Just to increase the vibrance of the island the way it used to be,
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as they don't come with e-bikes.
No,
Well,
e-bike.
I only if the e-bikes are type 2 and 3 that can go over 15 miles an hour. I mean, we really have a problem with our bicycle trails that we should get ahead of, because there are a lot of conveyances, scooters and skateboards and everything else that are going 25 and 30 miles an hour on those, and we should do something about that, because
Right.
that's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
real resource for us.
yeah. Yeah, it seems that's happening in a lot of communities.
Just to throw it, we're losing the affordable restaurants as well.
Mhm.
Bounty Flake is closed, although they're hoping to reopen. Fairgrounds is probably going to close and not be replaced. Yeah, having, and it's not just for cyclists and poor college students, it's also for locals to be able
Right.
to afford to eat out.
Yeah.
Hamburgers are up to like $20 now, or 25, depending on where you go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Jesse?
Yes, thank you. I don't know if this was mentioned and I kind of lost sight of the original question.
We're still
But
talking about challenges.
okay. My sense is, and this might be kind of controversial, I don't know. But I've got three kids, one who's 19, one who's 17, and one who is 12. And my sense is that there's sort of that age group between like 12 and like 19, especially like in the deep winter months, as a year-round family, there's just not a lot of recreational amenities for that age group, like the later teen, the high school, I guess. I mean, there's sports, which is great, but like, I feel like there needs to be more in the way of things for that age group to do in the winter on the island. And because otherwise, they kind of, when left to their own devices, they, get into things you don't want them to get into. So that's just my sense of that age group.
Yeah. Yeah. Growing up in a small town in Connecticut, I relate to that one. Can get a little stir crazy in the winter.
So,
Um,
Shane, would there challenges with coastal erosion?
Mhm.
Is that another subject?
Yeah, I know we haven't talked about that, or at least in my breakout group last night, we haven't talked about sea level rise a whole lot and coastal erosion. So if anyone else has other thoughts about that, please contribute. I know the group in person was looking at a map that showed like projected flooding, projected flooded areas for a 100-year storm, which is a storm that has a 1% chance of occurring in any year in 2070. And it was quite dramatic and interesting to look at. I didn't share that last night, but we could bring that up if people wanted to talk about that.
I'd like to have a timetable of, when we can expect the problems to strike Nantucket. That if there's any science on that could make it more of a tangible target for concern.
Yeah, there's been some really great coastal flood modeling that's been done by the Woods Hole group that has sort of projected sea level rise by year and which areas would flood in 2030, 2050, 2070. So fortunately, there has been a lot of good science done about that that the island can use.
Maybe just distributing that more effectively.
Mike, reach out to the Natural Resources Department or go to the Coastal Resilience Advisories page on the town's website. There is a tremendous amount of information available. And Nantucket is actually fortunate that we were one of the first places in Massachusetts to get very detailed mapping of future sea level rise. So we do have a lot of information available.
Thanks, Mary. I'll do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Bob.
But I think that along, as far as the coastal erosion goes, it's definitely a big deal and something people have to be aware of. Nantucket's been around a long time. There's been erosion at various times. Obviously, it seems like it's getting worse. And my comment would be, it goes back to initial challenges and goals of responsible leadership and focus, so that when it comes time to zoning, when it comes time to how much concrete, what fertilizers, all those things, that all impacts coastal erosion. And I think that has to be listed as something when we make a decision about zoning, when we make a decision about building, when we make a decision about where we're gonna put concrete, where we're, and septic systems is a big issue, you know, I think that as far as cleanliness and things like that, when we do that, that all has to be kept in mind as far as how we're making our decisions. So I think coastal erosion is definitely one that needs to be kept in mind when we make decisions about what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we have a lot of really good ideas on the board here now. Our next challenge as a group will be trying to prioritize these. And I know we've talked about how hard it is to, like, they're all sort of equally important in some way and probably all need to be acted on, you know, simultaneously. But just looking at this whole list, do you all feel like there's one challenge that rises to the top? I know, Bob, you just said that responsible leadership and focus kind of like undergirds the sea level rise adaptation issue. Are there other challenges that you all feel are central? Maybe the most important? And I want to prioritize just so we have a challenge to work with first.
I'll harp in there. I think we do a pretty good job of this. I think community involvement is the number one thing that I keep, you know, we're hearing about, you know, making sure that Mike can get the data that he wants about these things, making sure that the work Mary's doing is out so people understand the ideas about trees and what's going on with it. I think that's something that the community involvement to me may be, and access to information may be, to me, a number one sort of thing.
Like making sure the community is empowered and connected to help tackle these challenges?
At least aware. I mean, somebody raised an example, I think at the presentation, where someone in the back of the room, you know, after the whole presentation, someone says, oh, what about community? What about, you know, erosion, or what about this? I think we need to make good decisions based on data, reality, what we can and can't do. And I think that having that information and making sure that the community people have access to it if they want, is something very, very important.
Would anyone else like to respond to that?
I would just say that it's very easy for people to create misperception in the community to get people to, you know, jump on their bandwagon, or you know, and so I guess it's like, how do you try to make it clear what the actual truth of the matter is, like what the facts are? Because I do hear a lot of, like, you know, misinformed or people who misunderstand, you know, the history of something, or and that's I mean, you see that you see that in all politics, you know, every level of politics, I guess. But yeah, that's the challenge, is, you know, how do you make sure that people really are getting the accurate information?
That seems very related to what Bob was saying about community involvement. Like, first making sure people are getting accurate information before they are empowered to act on it.
Right, because I think that you are combating efforts on many issues where people are trying to, you know, just are fighting against that a little bit because they want people to trying to get support for their, you know, what they want.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion. May I? It's Carol. We have 25 civic associations across the island, which could possibly be better utilized to share these ideas that you were just talking about. And those 25 civic associations are under the Nantucket Civic League. And I think that's a great way to share information. And because these pockets have association meetings, for instance, we bring in guest speakers. We have Leah Hill coming this summer, so she can share, and Mike Burns, so that he can share. And You know, and those people have these misconceptions, will hear the facts, you know, and which is very important.
Yeah. And we will have a chance to dig into sort of like assets that the community has that we can use towards these challenges. So we'll make a note of that and then we kind of put it off to the side for now and then bring it back. That's a great point though.
I just throw another thought out there. I think the civic situation, I think this civic organization suggestion is an excellent one because it's an existing web of infrastructure and we can use it as a good tool. In the town on the mainland that we're in, the over 60 population has tripled since 2000. I've looked at the population in Nantucket. It hasn't grown quite as dramatically in the aging process as we have, but we have organized around the Council on Aging and have about 1,000 of the 5,000 people in town sort of actively in that group.
Wow.
We just might think of that as an area of exploration to try and perhaps with the civic leagues as a network, make use of the 60 plus organization that probably has more time on their hands than the people that are down in the working parts of their life, you know,
Right.
their life. So taking advantage of these, I use 60 plusers because most baby boomers don't want to be called elderly or seniors, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's one of the perks of retirement is more time for civic involvement.
It's just a matter of organization and getting the community glue amongst them to so they can be empowered.
Yeah. Yeah. So to help us kind of help prioritize these, maybe let's take a vote. Well, we don't have everyone on camera, but you can raise your hand. Does everyone see the raise hand function?
I can't read all that stuff.
Oh, okay. I could zoom in a little, I think. Can I?
I think you can just have to zoom in on your browser.
Or you can zoom on your browser. Yeah, you're right. Oh, good.
Well, I mentioned you can, but maybe you can at home too. That might work as well.
Yeah, it works at home. You're right.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah. See, so I'm talking about these 60 plus, AKA seniors, you know.
Okay, so if you think that funding is the most important challenge for Nantucket to address in the next 20 years, raise your hand.
Well, it would help if you listed all the choices first before.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Funding, responsible leadership, and focus, number 2. I guess Nantucket being a victim of its own success. Limited resources such as land and funding. I guess we already have funding. So I'm going to say limited. I'll make this one limited land. Lack of diversity of housing types. And then I'll say, that's kind of similar. Thank you, Mary, for forcing me to go through them. Maybe that one will be lack of diversity of housing types, and the next one will be like lack of essential services.
On the housing types, I think it's attainable housing types. There's all kinds of housing types, but they can't be attained by people.
Okay.
Attainable, not to confuse it with the affordable government programs.
Right. Okay, so lack of attainable housing. Cost of living in general. Automobile reliance. I guess this one wasn't exactly a challenge. I'm going to put that over here. Lack of housing in areas that are walkable specifically. I'm going to call this one just traffic. And kind of truck traffic will be included in that. This one will be lack of businesses and lodgings that cater to
Average incomes.
average incomes, yeah, average income residents and visitors. Coastal erosion, and I'll add / sea level rise.
I'd say,
Mhm.
I'd say average / lower income residents.
Okay. To average lower income residents. And then community involvement. So maybe that would be making sure the work is being done for the island is understood by the residents, community's power to help. Is that fair? Getting the community more involved in the work that is being done?
I think it's more enabling it with, organization and better information and all that kind of stuff.
And I'm the one that suggested, I think there's lots of opportunity on Nantucket. There's
Yeah.
a huge amount of opportunity. And it's just a matter of people getting out of their chairs and taking it. What I was really thinking about was easy access to the information. So, and we do a pretty good job of that. I'm not sure that there's much we can do, like town meetings coming up. I just saw it published, you can look now and read all the different things that are going to be discussed at town meeting now, if you want. If somebody wants to, they can go and read that. So we do a pretty good job of that, but I think it's important to keep that up and make sure people know about it and make sure people who want to be involved can be involved.
Yeah.
And I do think Nantucket does a pretty good job of that. And I just think that keeping that in mind for, thinking about making sure that it's easy to access that information, is something we should continue to aspire to continue to do.
Yeah, great.
And then those that want to be involved will be involved. There's a lot of people that aren't going to be involved. They don't want to be involved. That's fine. But to give people the opportunity is important.
Yeah, right. Okay, so to run through the list one more time: funding, responsible leadership and focus, victim of its own success, limited land, lack of attainable housing, lack of essential services, cost of living, auto reliance, lack of housing in walkable areas, traffic, lack of businesses or lodging that cater to average to low income residents and visitors, lack of winter recreational amenities, coastal erosion, and community involvement. Yes, Bob.
Can I raise one other thing as we start voting is about, and the purpose of these meetings is strategy versus tactics. So, strategy is sort of big ideas, what's going to differentiate us, what's going to be successful, versus tactics that need to succeed for that. So what I hear this list, some things about traffic and parking and zoning locations, things like that are things we definitely need to do, but I don't have a sense that that's our big strategic goals. I just want to throw out my thinking about them.
Yeah, appreciate that. Okay, so who would vote for funding?
I have a quick question. I'm sorry. Where would, we talked about the different form town government, better town government.
Wait, where is that? You mean
Where
commercial?
is that? Is that number one? I know we talked about it.
Are you talking about having more commercial nodes within the town, or having
a different form of town government, different town government system?
I think that would sort of fall under responsible leadership and focus. That was my understanding of that.
Yeah, where is that?
It's the second on the left.
I see it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so funding.
Can I say something just like as a overarching comment?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, like everything I've been lately thinking about as issues come up, as new, some things like our issues become issues that I guess theoretically were always issues, but no one ever actually labeled it and made it an issue. And just given, I go back to this limited resources, limited land, right? That's pretty much where small island, limited resources, limited land. So like when new issues crop up in the community and everybody gets all worked up, I say to myself, is this something that's worth our, our time and our like police resources and our, I kind of go back to that, the limited resources, limited land concept. And it's like, is this something that's worthy of those things? And that's how I'm starting to evaluate like almost every new community issue that comes up. And so it is a matter of prioritization, and we can argue, and that's sort of like at the high level, what I think we should be sort of debating. What are we going to make room for in our lives? What's worth the time and the effort and the limited land and the limited resources. So that's just a sort of a high level observation.
Yeah, no, I think that is so important. And I think that's sort of the driving reason behind a master plan, is to help the community clarify what's most important to it so that resources can be used strategically and efficiently. And there's kind of some thought has been given to what are the highest priority actions to take. Because yeah, money is always limited, and land and resources are in short supply. So I think that's really important.
So are we trying to draw a picture of immediate priorities, or are we trying to draw a vision of something 10 years or 20 years from now that we're
10
striving?
to 20 years. 10 to 20 years from now. So these actions could be taken sooner, but with that time horizon in mind, we're thinking about what's most important.
Well, my point is when you have a picture that's 10 or 20 years out, you don't necessarily have to deploy resources right away towards it, but as you decide to deploy resources, you should deploy them in a way that's consistent with the picture.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, but these actions might not be taken right away.
Most of these bigger projects and gaining consensus will be on a 10-year timeline though.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I agree with you,
Just knowing everything that I've been doing for the past 10 years.
God bless you.
Carol, you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. Do we have here, I'm sorry, I can't read it, but do we have here, I know we have traffic, I assume speeding may come under that. I also was looking for, safety, fire. The east end of the island does not have a firehouse. Where would you add that?
Yeah, so kind of town services such as police and fire. Is the challenge that they need more funding, or what is it that is?
Does that go under lack of essential services?
Yep.
Yeah. Carol, what about those services would you describe as the challenge?
Well, just speak for where I live. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 restaurants who are cooking, and the one fire, the whole village could go up. So I'm thinking, I don't know where you would put that, but I think the need for another access point that could take care of that side of the island, Quidnet, Tom Nevers, I'm not sure, but I think it's lacking and something that we seriously need to consider.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you put that under, okay.
Lack of essential services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. How's everyone feeling about voting now?
Do you want us to all use the raise hand function in Zoom, or how do you want to vote?
You can do a combination of the raise hand or just raise your hand if I can see your video.
Do we, do
His
we,
hand isn't working, just so you know.
do we vote for one or do we vote for several on sort of a high, medium, low?
Maybe you could vote for 3. Let's do that. You can pick your top 3.
There's a part that's kind of confusing me a little bit, which is that there's a timing aspect to all these issues. Like some are more urgently right in front of us right now, and some are like more slower evolving. But and another thing, like traffic, it's traffic is a problem in the summer, but I tell you, in January it's not a problem. So there's a seasonality to problems as well. So I guess I guess we have to bring some organization to this somehow, or prioritization. So I guess we'll just.
I know we're trying to organize a kind of like infinitely complex web of issues. So
Wait a minute. Aren't we trying to draw a picture, a 10 to 20 year picture that we're trying to get to?
Yeah.
Regardless of how immediate or patient we can be with it, do we want it to be like in 20 years, 10 years?
Yeah, exactly.
You could think of it as if a genie is going to grant you 3 wishes. And you can choose 3.
Perfect.
Eli, you don't look like a genie.
Well, no, but they're listening, to be sure.
Okay, I'll kick this off. Funding. Raise your hand.
Shall we use the raise hand feature or just use the picture?
You can do either. If I can see you, you could just raise your actual hand.
But I'm confused. Is this 1, 2, 3, 4, or is each yellow box we're voting on?
We'll vote on each yellow box.
Oh my goodness.
And you get to pick your top 3. So you get to vote 3 times.
I'll vote for funding as well.
Okay, so I see 3.
4.
4. Okay. Responsible leadership and focus. I see 2. Bob and Mary. Victim of its own success. How Nantucket stays true to its values despite increased tourism. 1. Limited land. How to open up opportunities without changing what makes Nantucket special. 2. 3.
3. 4.
4. A verbal hand raise is fine. That's more of a benefit. Okay. Lack of attainable housing. I see 4. Lack of essential services. 1. Cost of living.
Whoops, no, mine was for housing. I just couldn't find my hand fast enough.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Cost of living. Automobile reliance.
That's my 3rd vote.
Okay, so 3 total. Lack of housing in areas that are walkable. Traffic or speeding. You see 2. Lack of affordable businesses and lodging. See 0. Lack of winter recreational amenities, especially for young people.
I want to add my hand, but I've already voted for 3.
Okay, I'll give you half a vote.
Okay, half a hand.
Coastal erosion or sea level rise. 1. And this, I guess, we kind of decided is maybe not an issue because but to keep the community involvement going, keep people engaged. 2. Okay. Eli, thank you for your rearranging. I'm going to give Eli a second to do that. Keep track of all these numbers.
I mean, I think these are all really important.
Yeah,
So
I know. It's hard to rank them.
You gonna put a number on each one so we can see it?
There are numbers at the bottom of each one. I don't know if you can see those. This one was the 0.
I was also going to add that some of them are a little similar, like lack of affordable or attainable housing, and then also lack of housing in like walkable areas are all related.
Yeah, they're very
and cost of living. Yeah.
The ones about traffic and automobile reliance, I think, are pretty closely related to.
Yeah, we could kind of group them. I could group these two, and we could group cost of living. This one.
It shouldn't just be automobile reliance. From the discussion, it probably should be vehicle reliance, truck reliance.
Sorry, I think I just messed something up. Oh no, there. Okay. Vehicle reliance. Yeah.
Imagine if all the streets were walkable down, just walking streets downtown, and you had to park on the periphery.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Mike.
I remember Benjamin, my Spanish friend. From last night. I haven't even met him yet.
We're gonna have to meet this summer, Mike.
No, we're up in northwestern Spain.
Jane, can you please add me to funding? I didn't vote there.
Okay. Reinforcing that's a top challenge.
Can you increase the size, or I can do that on my end?
I think you can zoom in on your view.
Yeah, it works. You just use 2 fingers. Spread them till you make it bigger and.
Are you on a
Oh my God, that's great. Thank
Oh,
you.
no, I had the same epiphany.
Wow,
when
Mike, thank you.
Robert, no, thank Robert. He coached me. I didn't know how to do it.
Hey, Robert, I love that. Okay. Who knew?
Thank you for helping each other. Okay, so as Eli continues rearranging these, I think
Community
we'll start with,
involvement. That's community involvement.
I'm sorry, Bob?
Said helping each other is part of community involvement.
Exactly. Look at us. Okay, so let's start talking about funding. So when you imagine what it would look like for Nantucket to solve this challenge, what does success look like? And that can be, that idea can take many forms, but it's basically just like, what does it mean to you to succeed in addressing this challenge?
Well, I think part of it is learning to live within your means. But the other part of it is finding funding for things that are critical.
Mm-hmm.
I would follow that up by clear decision making, whether it's leadership, committees, whatever it is, about what's important. I think, Mary brings up a point that, how we use our funds is, to me, a biggest decision. It's how we use the funds we can get.
Right. So if you are successful in procuring the funding, are you clear about what your priorities are?
I think if we have a really effective master plan vision, you can mobilize and optimize the attractiveness for philanthropy in Nantucket. We've really benefited so much from philanthropy when people understand what the needs are and the fact that it will be impactful if they direct their philanthropy in that direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, giving people a clear idea of how to invest in the island, maybe.
What does the island want to be when it grows up? Do you want to make this happen?
Yeah.
You want to be part of this, to be part of your legacy. So
Mm-hmm.
helping
know
with
I
the
brought-
housing, helping with, community organization, mobilization effectiveness, et cetera.
I think one good example of that is when you look at conservation of land, that has almost entirely been privately funded, not taxpayer funded. And so that is a success story, I think, where people, put money up for the things that were important to them. The funding for the hospital construction, entirely private.
Yeah.
When we were in the early years here, we decided we want to have a place here, which is kind of a long-range plan. We used to sleep with building with Nantucket in mind under our pillows, what I mean? How are we going to do this? What do we have to worry about? So
So why was that resource important to you?
All about communication and vision.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I think Christy also had her hand up. Yeah.
Thanks. Just to kind of add on what Mary just said, and I know I brought it up last night, but trying to find other sources of revenue to tackle our challenges. And so having the ability to have a real estate transfer fee for housing. And I know another big thing that we've talked about as a town is the cost of coastal resiliency. And it's just going to be unsustainable to keep going to town meeting and asking for the overrides every year, and having it go on the tax base, but trying to figure out how to do that strategically and finding alternative sources of funding, whether it's grants or transfer fees. But I just think that's going to have to be part of the long-term planning.
Yeah. Sorry, Eli, feel free to keep taking notes. I keep jumping in there. Yeah, I think Carol had, or maybe, sorry, Bob, I think you had your hand up next.
Well, I would point out that I personally think Land Bank is one of our successes. That, this fee that everybody pays when they transfer a house, and what Land Bank has been able to do with parks and open space and things that they've been able to do, I think is one of our successes. So I think we should, if it means maximizing that or changing that or adding something else, that seems to me one of our successes is Land Bank.
Yeah.
And the use of that funding.
Yeah, that seems like a model that's worked pretty well. Carol?
Thank you. The land bank is a great idea. I've talked to a couple of people there, but unfortunately they're bound by this charter, which precludes them for doing certain things to help with whether it's low income families, et cetera. But I wanted to bring up something maybe someone said before about philanthropy, and most of the money that went to the hospital was private. And I would assume a lot of those folks are the non-voter taxpayers. And I don't know how we utilize those people better with the people who are, full-time residents who can vote. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of bringing up, how those people can better serve the island as non-voting people. But maybe that's the controversy in the town government that's now versus what, the group's trying to do, move to a different type of town government. But I just wanted to bring that up, what's going to happen with these coastal resilient districts, right? Where people are going to have to pay in particular districts because of erosion and what's happening in their areas.
Well, I think you can we can all start by appreciating them, not just, taking advantage of them.
Is that a vision for success, Mike?
Well, I think so. I mean, people don't talk about them much. There is a non-voter taxpayer committee or association, and they do have a more of a voice than they did 50 years ago, but or 20 years ago. but I don't think the community expresses their appreciation to them.
Who do you mean by non-voter taxpayers? I'm a I live there in the summer only. I'm a non-voter.
Yeah.
And I pay sales tax. When I buy anything, I pay sales tax and I pay real estate tax. But otherwise, is that what you mean by?
We mean you, Robert.
Okay, yeah. Okay, perfect. I mean, I pay sales tax whenever I buy anything. I pay my real estate, I pay for my car, all those different taxes I pay that, that I pay. So that's a lot of people.
That term non-voting taxpayer is generally meant to refer to a property owner paying property tax, but
Okay.
not voting.
Okay, that's me. That is me. That's true. That's me.
You're not alone. I'm with you.
So is there a sense it sounds like there's maybe a dynamic on the island where non-voting taxpayers don't feel as I mean, that seems like an interesting dynamic to me, that they're paying taxes, but they're not voting at town meeting.
So I would caution you to not derail the conversation.
Is that another rabbit hole?
Yes, that would open up.
You're right. You're right, Mary. Just put down appreciation and take it from there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other visions for success around solving this funding challenge?
I'll throw in one thought, which is I think it's important not just to think about the upfront cost of things, but how much you can get either on your return from investment or avoiding even more expensive costs in the future. But sometimes when I see cities do planning, it's all about what something costs now instead of, I don't know, something as simple as redesigning a city can affect people's life expectancy and hospital bills and all sorts of different things that are really hard to measure.
Yeah, that is very true.
I think we should also examine the grant writing effectiveness in town. I don't know that it's ineffective, but we should maximize efforts in that area, and certainly we could use some of the 60-plussers to help do that.
Yeah. Okay, this is a good list.
I think building on Benjamin's comment, understanding that capital expenditures create maintenance costs, and those maintenance costs need to be planned for just as much as the capital expenditures do. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that was one of the things that Chuck Marone likes to pound the table on, is that it's easy to get funding to create something new, but then there's no funding to maintain it.
Yeah, put the funding in there.
Right. So my next question here is, when we think about why Nantucket wants to meet this challenge and get to this point of what success looks like, what are the underlying values that make people care about this? And you can speak personally, but I would also encourage you to think about maybe values that you feel like are shared by Nantucket residents in general. So my prompt here is, we care about this because.
Somebody earlier said something about a New England ethos. And so I'm trying to articulate that, but it's coming out in a way that doesn't seem to connect to anything we've said so far. But minimizing the environmental cost of our consumption, and that can be the stereotypical thrifty New Englander. That can be the modern, reduce, reuse, recycle. It's related to the littering aspect and the waste management aspect. It's all very expensive to constantly be churning through materials, getting more new and throwing out more old. So I'm not quite sure how to bring that all together, And I'm not quite sure it belongs right here, but it's definitely something we care about.
Yeah, I'm curious, are you thinking about that in relation to town services and facilities or more broadly?
Both.
Mhm. Yeah, Bob?
I'd say I care about each other as part of that New England ethos.
Mhm.
Is people, and it's true on Nantucket, people care a lot about each other. In general, there's obviously fluctuations, but in general, one of the things I love about Nantucket and New England is a feeling that people do care about each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that relates to what we talked a lot about last night, making Nantucket a sustainable place where the economy can continue for many years, the community that lives there can continue to thrive, and care is maybe at the root of that. Anything else?
I think we care about this because we want our neighbors and ourselves to be able to remain on Nantucket.
Mhm.
A lot of these challenges and a lot of the, you know, the success is so that we can continue to be here. And a lot of these challenges are forcing people off the island.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I don't know how best to express it. But it's critical.
And it's not limited to year-round residents. I mean, we've heard a lot recently through the short-term rental debates about generational summer residents. And you know, and I was one of those for some time, and now I'm a year-round resident. And you know, I'll go back to my earlier comment. We all love Nantucket. You know, we care about this because we love Nantucket and we choose to be here.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, we're threatened by some of the warrant proposals economically. So, I mean, Mary, I appreciate that.
I'm sorry if I may, I can't raise my
course.
hand, but
Yeah.
one of our biggest challenges that I find is balancing um reg regulations to try and limit some things with who they actually impact. Because so many times the people with the biggest resources are the ones who have the easiest time dealing with the new regulations, where it tends to hurt the middle class person when permitting becomes exorbitantly expensive and there's too many hoops to jump through and it takes too much time to build a house. Those are the people that we start to lose, and it's a really bad unintended consequence of having more regulations in place.
Right.
It's really something that I always have to try and look at it with this lens of, if we do this, that puts up this barrier, who does it really hurt in the end?
Yeah. Making sure there aren't unintended consequences of
Balancing,
regulations that affect the most vulnerable residents.
Yes.
balancing the unintended consequences.
Mhm.
Very good point, Don.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really important.
If all we do is try and make something more expensive to discourage the occurrence of it, that means that it continues to be available to people with deep pockets and is not available to people without.
It increases the divide.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I'm gonna keep that note for a different section.
Well, I think in theory, we like to think that, problems can be solved by regulation, but then when we start to walk down that road of what regulations might look like, it gets quickly, you start to realize that there's a million different scenarios, personal situations. It's, and then you add more and more nuance to it, and it just becomes more and more complicated to navigate. And yeah, I mean, you quickly realize it's actually not that easy. And yeah, so I support all those comments.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
It's almost trying to find a way that we brand what we welcome here and from a community point of view. And sort of talk in harmony about it so that people, we still have someone on the session that was exploring coming to Nantucket for the first time. So if that person were to hear what we think of our community, you'd say, oh, I want to be there, or that's not my cup of tea, and we get more of the people that want to do what we want to do versus those that don't.
That's a perfect segue to our next prompt, which is to achieve this vision, we will use blank. So what I heard from you, Mike, is we can use sort of the Nantucket's ability to brand itself and represent itself in a way that's aligned with its values to attract people to the island. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in that. Of course, I'm a marketing kind of guy, so
Yeah.
you know what they say about salespeople,
Yeah, what else what other existing strengths or assets that the island has can it use to achieve this vision of solving the funding challenge and taking the actions we wrote above? I'll scroll back up here. We had talked about mobilizing philanthropy, learning to live within your means, finding funding for things that are critical, clear decision making, tapping other sources of funding, such as grants, transfer fees, etc., land bank, understanding maintenance costs, better grant writing.
I would say promoting a framework for more public-private partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Something where a neighborhood has a strong interest in something set, for example, and they're willing to put up private funding, but work with government funding.
Take the fields over in Tom Nevers.
Yep. That could be a good example of the people within the neighborhood may be willing to donate funding and be a part of the planning to redo that whole park.
Right.
But it's a partnership with government.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
We had mentioned town staffing briefly, and I think that it's important that we have the staff within the town that we need to achieve these goals.
Do you think that the town currently has that, or you're saying the town should work towards that?
I think the town needs to continue to work towards that. I know the town has been adding positions as needs are identified, and I think that we're going to have to keep doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just say staffing/skills. You want to have the quality of people that have the experience to help us.
Yeah. One thing we talked about last night was just the fact that land value is so high on the island, and how could that be leveraged to bring more funding for town services and efforts.
So hopefully this is not a third rail, but conservation land does not pay taxes. And so if we've got more than half the island in conservation, the tax revenue is limited to the remaining property. So that's been a subject of some conversation recently is, how can we not lose our tax base as we put more and more land into conservation?
Right. Yeah, how could we frame that as a strength? Maybe strategic planning?
The old Chinese character being the same for crisis and opportunity.
I think that if you're going to look at it simply in a positive light, public use of conservation land is something that we have done a pretty good job on and should continue to work towards. And the land bank has been really good in this aspect because public recreation is part of their mandate. And so they're creating spaces that are, really more for public recreation than for conservation, like a dog park where you can let your dog run. That's not really a conservation space, but it doesn't have a house on it. But it's for public use. So, that increasing that, the public benefit of conservation space.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe like capitalizing on this abundance of conservation space that already exists to meet recreational needs.
Maybe try the word amplifying instead of increasing. Just
amplifying, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In other words, you're doing a good job today. Let's do even better, Just to keep away from the third rail being electrified.
Appreciate that. Yeah, Jesse?
This is probably stating the obvious, but like intergovernmental collaboration and willingness to compromise and trying to always keep in mind that we all represent the same constituents in the same island, while we may come from different special interest group perspectives. We are ultimately all serving the same people. And I mean, that's actually a huge strength, I think, compared to places like the Vineyard has, many townships. And so, for example, like the Martha's Vineyard Land Bank Commission, there's, representatives from each different town, and they argue over, when their town takes in more money than the neighboring town, they think that their town should, be able to spend the money that their town is taking in and like on new acquisitions and projects or whatever. And so that whereas we're really fortunate in the fact that we all represent the same people and island, and you would think that there would be a little bit less infighting about issues because of that. So I guess, just I think the more respective boards can, be open-minded and try to hear each other out and try to find common ground in the name of progress, that would be good.
Yeah, so you're saying kind of like tapping into that underlying reality that everyone is ultimately working to serve the same town, and trying to strengthen like alignment and working towards common goals between the different
yes
groups. That's great.
Is there much collaboration on, I can't speak to this personally, but is there much collaboration on Nantucket amongst the faith communities?
I would say yes, there's an interfaith council. Yes,
Is it effective, Mary, or?
I would say so.
Good. I mean, I think that's, that's a basis, still a basis of community for a lot of people in this country, their faith communities. And if we can mobilize that in conjunction with the vision for 20 years from now, that could be powerful.
Yeah.
And then also an avenue of interaction and communication, I know that the homeless work that's being done in Nantucket is really laudatory.
I would expand, it's not just the interfaith community, but it's all the nonprofits.
Yeah, maybe that's, yeah, maybe, I don't know how to speak about it myself, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to elaborate on that at all, Mary?
Well, we have an incredible number of active nonprofit organizations, and they're providing benefits to the community, whether it's an arts education or, the Athenaeum is not publicly funded, it's a private organization. The Nantucket Historical Association is doing tremendous work in preservation and in looking at coastal resiliency. We are very fortunate that those nonprofits are so big in our community.
Yeah, land council in terms of water quality and the Nantucket Golf Association in terms of scholarships for high school students and vocational students.
Yeah. Yeah, Bob?
I think I agree with what's been said about the number and the individual successes. I guess one of the thoughts I think, and I think Mike brought this up, I would reiterate, is the collaboration and cooperation between them. I don't know if it's sort of one person reaches out to another person, or if there's umbrella organizations. We might be able to enhance, I forget the word Mike used, amplify some of the things that are going on with these, not with our very, very successful and wonderful organizations. And I think interfaith, I know of some of the interaction that goes on with the interfaith groups. And I just think that's something, I do think that's something to amplify. That's community involvement, that's funding, that's, coming out with good things that can be done. And I just think it would be maybe something we can look at is how, where that focus is and how it's done, and being sure that, the left arm is aware of what the right arm's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesse?
Okay, now I'm gonna start saying something controversial potentially.
Good.
So, with the land bank being identified as a major funding source for the island, the land bank is not a part of the town of Nantucket. It is its own independent legal entity. It always has been. So it's not, the budget doesn't get approved at town meeting. There's no appealing of land bank decisions to the select board. There's really not, there's no, there is some language in the act that talks about how they're supposed to be developing a plan that's consistent with the town's master plan, but and there have been some good partnerships on things in the past, but I do see a little bit of a I guess just there always has been a disconnect, and some people might say that that's a good thing, but I think in today's world and the needs of the island, there needs to be more, the island really needs the land bank to be planning in coordination with other public entities, I think. And so it's just it's such a tremendously powerful tool because of the funding that it's just so yeah. It's a separately elected commission, and there, like I said, there's not really any accountability to the town government. They're just accountable to the people, and that's it. So, and I do think there's actually a lot of room for interpretation of the Land Bank Act. It's actually not as black and white as people think or say. It definitely has a flavor to it. It kind of prioritizes interests in land that the land bank should be acquiring, but there's also, I think, a lot of interpretation that can be made with the act, and it really depends on the people that get elected and sit in those seats to do that. That they're the ones that set the policy and do that interpretation. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point.
Jesse, you have to fess up as a former director of the land bank.
You seem very knowledgeable.
Yeah. But it's just that's all true. Those are all true things that I'm saying. So
yeah. So if you were to phrase it as a positive,
right? Yeah.
Would you say that there is possibility of greater collaboration between the town and the bank to work towards common goals or something like that?
Yes, I think that's a great way of framing it.
Okay.
So to maximize the collaboration between the land bank and the community's goals?
Yes.
Eli, did you
And
get that?
and that would take obviously a lot of outreach and engagement and diligence to sort of find the majority consensus of what this,
Yeah, but
but
we're just doing the vision today. We have
right.
a vision of good collaboration. And
I mean,
then
it just
the how-to comes afterwards.
right. It's
Yeah.
just the fact that it is such a powerful tool because the funding is so tremendous. It just has to be said. It's like
The funding and also the track record,
Yeah.
just like the Historic District Commission, the track record, just like the hotels off away from the shoreline, the track record's been good.
Yeah.
I mean, being able to buy, I mean, to me, when I look at, and I said this yesterday in our group, that there are strategic parcels of land that are really going to be important to the future of the island. And no other organization has the power to like write a check and purchase that land tomorrow than the land bank. You know, nobody else can do that in the public interest. Town
Well,
can't do that. Affordable Housing Trust has limitations.
Maybe we should start a community effort to sort of identify those parcels. And at least they'll be on the table for discussion,
Yeah, that might come up as part of the master plan process.
Yeah. Is the master plan, this is to our coordinators here, is the master plan something that is for the community or for the town? We just illustrated here that the town government structure is not the whole community. I mean, it's an important part of it. But
Yeah.
so is it
Eli, I see you unmuted.
the community master plan or is this a town master plan?
It's like the contract is with the town of Nantucket.
That's not my question.
Well, ideally it's serving the whole community. That's the spirit of it. But town facilities, town services is just one part of this very interdisciplinary plan. So I would say the town sort of governance is a big piece of it, but it's not. It can extend beyond that.
I think it's fundamental to answer that question with the engagers of the resources here, whether this is for the community or the town.
So I believe the Commonwealth of Massachusetts mandates that the town produces a master plan. So in that sense, it is a governmental document, but it's certainly something that all of the actors in the town should be aware of and should strive to be sensitive to. I'm not going to say in alignment because people can certainly make their own decisions, but sensitive to the goals and actions expressed in the master plan.
Well, I keep pressing on the question because there are a lot of actors that are non-resident taxpayers. And are they in the town or out of the town? Are they in the community, out of the community? They're certainly in the community, but are they in the town, out of the town, et cetera? So community versus town is an interesting question here. It just came up with the land bank discussion.
Eli, did you want to jump in?
No, sure. I think I would just say like, usually the master plans are, I mean, Nantucket's so unique because you have this big community of people who pay property taxes and own property, but don't live on the island for most of the year. But I would say the master plan should address all of the people who are stakeholders in the town, whether those are businesses, part-time residents, really anyone who is an important part of the town. But generally they are primarily carried out by the town government and the residents of that town. So I'd say a master plan probably shouldn't tell a business how to operate, but it might address how certain businesses or industries can be utilized for the betterment of the town. And if those businesses are community minded and want to, they might work with the town in a way that's advantageous.
Yeah, I think you used the
that
word
makes sense.
I think you used the word stakeholder, and I think every member of the community is a stakeholder.
Mhm,
I think that should be just consistent in the vision that you're building here.
mhm.
Yeah, Bob.
I mean, to follow up Mike's thing, I think it's for both. I think that, and I think this planning process has involved as many people as want to be involved. I mean, I think the kitchen cabinet things that we had, I know we had a Shop Homeowners Association that they sent out to anybody could come to the meeting, anybody could be involved, all of the different questions. So I think in our local community, we had the opportunity to participate. And this process here, went out very broadly and in the newspapers and everything, and people could read about it. Anybody could join this. So I do think I've said it before, I think the community involvement is something very important and something we do pretty well for people that want to be involved can be involved. There's a lot of people that don't want to be involved and that's their business. But if you want to be involved, I think there's the opportunity, I think in this planning process, people have had the opportunity to provide input, I think, so far. That's my feeling as a summer
No,
resident.
no one's complaining about that. All we're just saying is, as you express the community thing, is express it as a community vision.
Yeah.
I think you can also think of it as the master plan process is a way for all of the interested members of the community to instruct town government as to what should be the priority and what the government needs to accomplish.
But not only town government, but the land bank, which is not part of town government, is the example we just stimulated this. And there are other entities like that, so. Just want to be inclusive of all of that.
Definitely. Yeah. Just keeping an eye on the time. I wish we had time to get to all of these challenges. I'm glad we had a robust conversation about at least one of them. And now that you kind of have this framework in mind for what we're talking about for a vision in terms of a vision for success, what the town would look like in 10 to 20 years, the values underlying it, all those elements. I want us to pivot to our next exercise before we head out. So what I'm going to have you all do, and I'll share the link to this survey, is fill out a sort of Mad Lib style vision statement. So we've created this Mad Lib format so you can use it to write something that will come out sounding like a vision, since you probably don't do that in your daily life very much. So just keep our discussion in mind today as you're filling this out, and it can be your own personal vision or kind of what you heard from your fellow participants. And so there's two options. This is option 1, and this link that I'll send you is option 2. So I'm going to put these in the chat.
I added them.
Oh, thank you, Eli.
And what's the difference between 1 and 2? What's the difference between 1 and 2?
There's just a slightly different format. You can fill out one or both. If one calls 2 more and you just want to fill that out, that's fine. People have slightly different preferences, we found, about what they're more drawn to. And so there's 3 pages on this survey. The third one will show you your written vision. So once you get to that point, leave that page open on your browser because we're going to share them with each other.
So how do we have to go over into the chat?
Yes, open the chat and you'll see a couple links.
There's chat.
there should be two links at the bottom that I sent out. Do you see those?
No,
Oh, well, that's not good. Um,
You try again.
are other people seeing this?
I see a list of all the participants.
I think you're in participants and not chat.
Oh, okay. I'm clicking on chat.
So chat should be on
Okay,
my
chat,
screen.
says type message here.
Yeah, so above that, there should be a list of messages that people have sent. Do you
Okay.
see that?
Valerie Oliver to everyone.
Yeah, scroll
Yep.
down to the bottom of that list of messages.
Okay, here's 3 links.
Yeah. So you could click one of those.
If you want to do both Mad Libs, just make sure they're open in different browser tabs, or you will lose them. I don't know why, but we found that.
I don't know what
Okay.
a browser tab is, so.
So maybe just do one.
Yeah, just click one
If you
link,
know what a
Mike.
browser tab is, then
Here's one at 11:24 a.m. Is that one I should start with?
that's it. Yep.
Okay. Oh, okay, 20:45. That's good.
We'll give you a few minutes to fill that out. Regroup. You can let me know when you're done, either by just writing in the chat or telling me.
I completed mine.
Okay.
And I love the process. It's very cool.
Oh, cool.
Fill in the blanks and then you get a paragraph. That's cool. I guess that's AI, I guess, huh? That's cool.
That's your own brain.
It's okay if we just do one, right? I mean, I just did.
Yeah, whatever you feel like doing. And again, once you see your final paragraph, leave that open on your screen. Everyone still need another minute or so?
Yes.
Okay. Take your time.
How do we know what group we're in?
You don't have to fill that out.
Okay.
You can say Zoom if you want.
Zoom group.
Yeah.
Now what? We go to next?
go to next, and then leave that page open. Okay, I can see a few responses on my end. Thank you all. Let me know if anyone would like another minute. Otherwise, we can start sharing these out. Okay, we'll start sharing. So would anyone like to read their completed vision? Bob.
Let me call it up here. I always like to sit in the front of the class anyway, so I'll go first and
Good for
let
you.
people poke holes in. Okay. So Nantucket Vision MatLib option 1. In 2045, people describe Nantucket as beautiful, family-oriented, and opportunities for nature activities. The town is known for its history and beauty. Our community has made significant progress in addressing the challenges of housing for working full-time residents. We did this by taking actions like requiring affordable housing and leadership focus on this problem. We leveraged community strength like leadership focus and nonprofit organizations to make progress. Built on a foundation of values such as we care about each other and we care about the future of Nantucket, Nantucket is a place where I love to be to enjoy the many activities such as gardening, reading, helping others, bicycling, going to the beach, and fishing. We take pride in our history and natural resources, a defining part of Nantucket's identity.
Wonderful. That's so nice. Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's a great vision statement. Would anyone else like to share?
I'm happy to read mine. I don't know it's quite as comprehensive as Bob's, but I'll give it a try. In 2045, people describe Nantucket as family and community centric, naturally beautiful and environmentally secure, and vibrant and sustainable for all community members. The town is known for its sense of place and community and open spaces and natural beauty. Our community has made significant progress in addressing the challenges of housing for all community members, and sustainability. We did this by taking actions like strengthening communications and goal setting and being open to new approaches and funding. We leverage community strengths like mutual love for Nantucket, got that from Mary, and striving for efficiencies and engaging philanthropy to make progress. Building on a foundation of values such as long-standing involvement in the community and valuing the economic diversity of all community members, Nantucket is a place where our family gathers. We take pride in our community relationships, a defining part of Nantucket's identity.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mike. I love these. Yeah, Ben.
I don't
I'll
believe you
read
pulled
mine.
this off.
All right, let's see. In 2045, people describe Nantucket as serene, inclusive, and vibrant. The town is known for its pristine natural spaces and plazas, parks, and pedestrianized streets. Our community has made significant progress in addressing the challenges of affordable housing affordability and traffic. We did this by taking actions like strategically rezoning parts of the island to allow for more density and mixed use, and replacing parking across the island with pedestrian zones, greenery, and more housing. To make progress, we leveraged community strengths like building on a basic network of multi-use paths so that everyone can walk, bike, and roll comfortably anywhere on the island. And by building on a basic bus service, by dramatically increasing service levels and areas served. This was built on a foundation of values such as everyone is welcome and has equal value, and protecting the environment for humans, animals, and all wildlife. Nantucket is a place where humans and nature are in balance and both are thriving, and we take pride in being willing to be the first municipality to try a solution, like the land bank transfer tax.
Excellent. That must be Benjamin.
That was me.
I love that.
We're gonna have you translate that into Spanish, Benjamin.
I'm happy to go next.
Great.
Let me just pull it up. In 2045, people describe Nantucket as sustainable, beautiful, and resilient. The town is known for its open and free beaches and its diverse community. Our community has made significant progress in addressing the challenge of attainable housing. We did this by taking actions like addressing zoning and permitting and funding attainable housing. We leveraged community strengths like working together and launching private-public partnerships to make progress. Built on a foundation of values, that one didn't fall in, such as blank and blank. Nantucket is a place where everyone has a home. We take pride in preserving Nantucket, a defining part of its identity.
Wonderful. Thanks, Christy. Mary or Dawn or Jesse, would you like to go?
I can't see mine. I don't know if you can see mine. I like submitted it and then I got to another page and
I think I can probably pull yours up if you want me to.
yeah, I didn't have it emailed to me, so.
Okay, yeah, I have it here. I will read it. In 2045, people describe Nantucket as beautiful, expensive, and unique. Am I reading the right one?
Yep.
Okay. The town is known for its conservation land and historic resources. Our community has made significant progress in addressing the challenge of housing. We did this by taking actions like leveraging public-private partnerships, such as working with nonprofit housing developers, and working collaboratively with all sectors of government. To make progress, we leveraged community strengths like relationships and local expertise. Built on a foundation of values such as love of community and sensitivity toward Nantucket aesthetics and character, Nantucket is a place that people love to call home. We take pride in our unique sense of place.
Great.
Great, thank you, Jesse.
Can we get copies of these, or are they gonna be accessible?
Yeah,
They're
let me
terrific.
see if I can share these right now. Hold on. They don't look as pretty on my end. They just look like a survey form. Mary, did you have one you'd like to read? If not, that is okay.
How did you share those? Where do I look?
I haven't shared them yet. I'm seeing if I can do that.
Okay.
Doesn't look that good. I'm sure we can post them on the website with all of the master plan materials, but I don't know that I can share them right now.
And where is that website?
If you just search Nantucket Master Plan Visioning.
Search it on the town website or search it
Oh
on?
yeah, here, I'll put that link in the chat as well.
So how do I get back to the chat?
It's Shane.
Yeah.
If Ian Wall, who's never been to Nantucket and still on the call, is willing to share, I don't know if he is or not, I'd love to hear what his input is from this discussion from people who
Good
have
idea.
extensive experience. I'd love to hear what his, just a very brief take on what he thought, if he wants to share. If he doesn't want to share, that's fine too. But
Great question.
I thought it would be interesting sort of feedback for us who live here now.
Yeah. What do you say, Ian? I think he's still on the call, but he might not be listening.
You might want to get some lunch.
It's fine.
But it was a good idea, Robert. I like that idea.
All right, so it's 11:50, more or less, so we can start to wrap up. Yeah, just wanted to thank you all so much for this great participation. I feel like Eli and I both learned a lot, recorded a lot of really great comments. We have this meeting recording, which we'll be transcribing to take more detailed notes. And then I linked in the chat the webpage where you can find updates on this master plan process. But I think after this visioning portion of the plan, our team will continue to work through the phases of the master plan, including finalizing the inventory and assessment, identifying key planning issues, creating goals, policy.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Yeah, Ian, well, I just wanted to comment. Thanks for having me chime in. Yeah, I've enjoyed this lecture. I haven't been to Nantucket. My main interest was that, like I said, I grew up in Long Island. I've also done work in Fire Island community, which is another like kind of narrative I was thinking about when you guys were discussing this, being like a rental summer community, and as well as Chincoteague Island, which is an eastern coast of Virginia. It's another similar unique setting where I've worked there on a remote island. It's an old fisherman town, and they've really dealt with similar struggles that you guys are dealing with, where there's like an influx of people there in the summer. They do like things during July to help attract people from the community for like horses, wild horses that are there, and they've really like allowed nature to then guide that as an event for them in the summer. But I also liked what was pointed out about having people barged in, workers. Growing up in like high school, I used to work on a fire island, go back and forth with the barge for the ferry workers, for day workers in and out, doing like construction, glass repair, home remodeling. So I'm used to that transient nature of having to come and go from the island. But when it comes to healthcare, I've also worked in dentistry on that Chincoteague Island. There was only one dental office on the whole island. And towards my tail end of working there, there was issues with wastewater management. I don't know if that's an issue on this island, but also infrastructure to allow for, you're saying, an influx of healthcare workers to be there on site. Just wanted to highlight that as I think another thing for, you have to pay a premium for for healthcare workers to come in to the island and work transient. And a lot of patients in communities like this that are staying there long term don't like the transient nature of the healthcare provider. And then one other thing highlighted, I thought Mike brought it up, that I liked was the idea of the hostile, having some type of like coastal, high quality hostel that's built. I've been to hostels in Costa Rica that are like involving like coastal community living type arrangements that are short-term rentals that a lot of people can utilize toward getting like good people in seasonally, workers, and getting them out for a reasonable rate for the summer rental community.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Does he still want to come visit?
Oh yeah, I'm planning for the 4th of July. I already got my days off, so I'll be there from the 2nd to the 6th.
Fantastic. It's a great
Yeah.
weekend to be here.
Perfect. Cheers.
I've got a tent I can put up on the property if you.
Just don't bring a car. Don't bring a car.
That's what I'm saying, right?
No car, bring your bike, no car.
Nice.
A 7 mile bike ride to my tent.
Yeah, and I think like accessibility for like, city bike type arrangements, I know has worked well in Manhattan and stuff, but as far as getting people to implement stuff like that, where they have stations to check the bikes in and charging stations for people to get around the island, another great asset.
Yeah. Yeah, any other final comments before we wrap up?
Sorry, one last thing would be just, I think part of the island and the historic nature that was the whaling community. I think that actually attracts a lot of people, even young people to the community, is like having that historic aspect that it's like, time capsule where you go there, you want to feel that authentic nature of like old coastal living. I think people are coming to like appreciate that more in society, especially younger populations.
Mhm.
Following that up, I think it is interesting that on from last night and today, nobody actually mentioned the beauty of the Nantucket Historic Association, the NHA, which is, I think, another big success that we have on the island. It's just fantastic. I would only comment, thank you very much for the people running the sessions. I thought you did a great job, and thank you for the opportunity to be involved.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. I know it's not always easy to make the time for events like this, so we really appreciate your participation and got some really good input here. So
I was surprised by the effectiveness of what we've done.
good.
And that was under your leadership, so I heartily endorse Robert's comment.
Glad to hear it. All right. Well, yeah, so I hope you'll stay tuned with the master plan process. And yeah, keep the good engagement going. All right. Thank you all again. Enjoy your Saturday.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget to send me my invitation, Benjamin.
It's a deal. It's a deal. Where I was trying to find where you are, Mike. Are you on Sandy Road, or what's it called? Sandy
Salty, SALTI
Salty.
way. Salty
Okay,
way.
maybe I'll send you a postcard, Mike. Look in your mailbox.
6 Salty Way, Mike Hurley at mac.com. Send me your information.
Okay, say your email once more.
And Mike Hurley, just like the name, at
Yep.
mac.com.
Okay.
And we may have
All right, Mike. Have a nice day.
we have a brewing relationship who's and my grandson's special other has a place in northwestern Spain, so we're quite interested in that topic.
Oh, cool. All right, Mike. Have a nice afternoon.
God bless
Bye.
you. Take care.